Hello, this is Dread, and in today's video topic, we are going to be going over the Road to 1.0 episode on Lightning Blast. So, I was playing Lightning Blast in Endgame with the Rune Master variant with Frostwall, and I enjoyed it a lot. It turns out with Frostwall and as much cast speed as possible, you can make Lightning Blast a viable skill all by itself. You don't have to use any other skills for clear other than Lightning Blast specifically, right? And of course, Frostwall to proc Lightning Blast and Static to proc Lightning Blast. It made the build feel absolutely amazing in endgame, and I'm surprised that I enjoyed it so much. It's just a self-cast build, but we enjoyed it nonetheless. So I was thinking, well, can we level this build? It turns out you can actually level this. Now, of course, if you haven't already, I would heavily suggest leaving a like on the video and subscribing to the channel, as that is the best way of currently supporting me. You can also follow me down below on Twitch, where I live stream every so often for Last Epoch, and I'll definitely be live streaming 1.0. Now, with all that being said, let's talk about how I leveled this build, shall we? So the idea is at level 1-ish or level 2, 3, 4, you're going to be specking into Lightning Blast and focusing on Closed Circuit. Closed Circuit, the way that this works is it makes it so that Lightning Blast can chain back to you and then of course give you a large buff. It gives you 40% crit chance and 15% increased damage per stack, and you can get well over 400% increased damage in the end game and a very large amount of crit chance. Early on, when I was messing around with it, I ended up with I think 20% crit chance at level 10, while also having 150% increased damage. And that doesn't sound that good until you realize that is very strong early on. Like at level 10, that is a very strong amount of damage, which is kind of funny, right? And another thing that I actually did early on was, since my Lightning Blast was 0 mana, because you can get the minus mana cost stuff, right, on your wand or whatever. This meant that my mana was essentially free to do whatever I want. So through level 5 to 8 or whatever, I used Glacier on top of Closed Circuit, and let me tell you, Glacier with 30% crit chance and a bunch of increased damage early on feels absolutely amazing, because even if we went negative mana, it didn't matter because we could just keep casting Lightning Blasts and not have a single problem early on. And eventually we moved into Runic Invocation. We used Invocation with the Ball Lightning, Gone, 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 to do a little bit of extra damage early on. And then later on, we turned it into a movement skill once we got Frostwall, which meant that we could cast a very large amount of Lightning Blasts very quickly, thankfully. And then at level 50, we snag, of course, Static, which then can cast another Lightning Blast on top of all that. All of this combined led to a very smooth leveling process. I did not feel weak and at all during the entire leveling process. As soon as I got Closed Circuit, it was good to go, all the way from level 3 all the way to level 80, which I ended with my first empowered shade kill. Now, if you want the finished version of this build, I'll be leaving that down below in the description. The first thing you should be doing after this video, if you finished to get to level 80, you definitely want to get a Twisted Heart from the Reign of Dragons boss, as that will boost your survivability significantly. Now, with all that being said, let's go in Planner and talk about the build more in detail, shall we? All right, so now we are in Planner with the build. So, like I said, from level 1 to 13, this was my character. What we did was we first specialized Lightning Blast and we got Closed Circuit, which gives us a very large amount of increased damage and increased crit early on, making the build feel really good. And we also, of course, grabbed some front loaded as well. This makes it so that whenever we're doing single target, we essentially just deal 40% more damage, right? And for gearing, like I said, something like a brass amulet early on is very good, as having all that cast speed. It means that we get more closed circuits and we also hit more with lightning blast, which equals more damage. Cast speed is the thing that you definitely want. I also grab Avarice from Urza's Ledger, the Urza's Ledger quest. This makes it so that our leech is actually useful on our HP, right? We have 1k HP in endgame and 1k ward in endgame when we get to empowered monoliths. And this means that we actually can leech back our life, and it can be a part of our defensive layers, right? That on top of course, our ward generation. Now, for level 23 here, we do a little bit of a different change here. We focus on reunification, which then, we get a little bit of, gone, gone, gone action where we put down ball lightning, which hits a bunch of times, right? It was a decent single target steroid for us early on because the closed circuit buffs are global. So having something extra on top of that was really cool. And of course, we use Mana Strike to recover the mana from Gone because Gone is very expensive, right? And that's what I did all the way until I could get access to Frostwall. Now, as you can tell here, we get a staff with like cast speed. That's like your biggest priority is to get items with cast speed, as that will make the build feel much better early on. So level 37 here, we swap into Frostwall. We get a lot of cast speed on our wand, a lot of cast speed on our catalyst. We also get base crit on our catalyst, which is really good. That makes it so we have a lot more cast speed than normal. We get all the cast speed in the tree, and that makes it so that our lightning blast is going off constantly, right? And then we can also show you I grab Frostwall, right, at level 15 in Rune Master, and then we grab all the Lightning Blast stuff. And it means that our clear, like, it gets much better when we get Frostwall. Like, we turn in, like, it feels like as though we're playing a real build at this point, right? And then we turn Runic Invocation into our teleport skill, which is a decent buff because it gives us a bunch of cast speed, spell flat damage, gives us some ward, and eventually we can grab Runeslinger for even more ward, right? And then you could probably dump a Mana Strike at this point, right? And then we have Lightning Blast, right, with the double cast. We get the chain range, the more damage here, and eventually we'd move into Shatter Shock to get the more damage, right? Then we're level 50 here. This is when we have all 5 skills specialized, static, right? So that we can grab the lightning blast triggers here later on, and all our skills are starting to level up and stuff. We're starting to get decent like weapons, like for instance, the Spriggan branch with cast speed and crit chance is really good early on. Then of course an Osprey skull with like base crit, and of course the cast speed, holy cast speed here as well. Like I said, lots and lots of cast speed, right? We get a decent amount of movement speed as well on our boots and our rings. Like all of that combined makes it so that we zoom through the Monolith of Fate, and then we get to level 80 where the finished build is done. We get some static idols, right? So we can maintain static as well. And of course, we get the cast speed from Lightning Aegis as well, giving us even more light like cast speed. And at this point, we're at level 80. We're ready to go to grind for Reign of Dragons to get our Twisted Heart and stuff like that. Now, with all that being said, I would heavily suggest checking out the video down below, as that will be the finished version of this build, so you can figure out what you should be aiming for with this build. Now, bye. Have a wonderful rest of your day, guys.